So let me introduce my guest, Sarah. We're gonna have a lot to talk about. I follow DDGeopolitics. I've seen a lot of your foreign policy tweets, and it's very interesting talking to perspectives that are generally anti-imperialist. So this first time we actually had a conversation. So nice to have you on our RBN for the first time, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I love this format. It's very I love it. Very conversational, very interactive. I love that.
Yeah, we just talk a lot of shit here. So this is the first time you've been on RBN. So before we actually get into the topic, I want because I'm also kind of curious as well. Do you want to introduce yourself, like, and how you got into geopolitics? What kind of got you into reporting?
Sure.
Just a general introduction before we get started.
Okay, well, don't hate me, but I served in the military. My theory about the military is if you don't get radicalized while you're in there, then there's seriously something wrong with you. So I think that I became pretty radicalized around like my 8 or 9 year mark around my deployment, when we deployed and participated in the liberation. We'll talk about the word liberation later, I'm sure, of Syria, liberating Syria. And then like simultaneously while I'm working on this, I'm reading books about it and being like, we're not liberating this, like, you know, so it was very conflicting. I think it caused me to have a lot of like mental health issues. I mean, the military is not very conducive to mental health anyway. So now I'm retired due to health reasons. But while I was in the military, I definitely did take advantage of the free school. And I went back to school for political science. And that's really where I fell in love. It was like people like you, actually, people like you, Haas Jackson, even Zoya, people like Zoya, that really really like encouraged me, like not even personally, just by being you, encouraged me to self-study, encouraged me to go out and pick out things and keep going. And I finally, I mean, we started reporting on it. We have a connection to Russia because we're all mostly Slavs. We started reporting on that immediately after Russia hit Ukraine. And then it just took up from there. DDG became a very organic cooperative. I think that this is something that your listeners would really understand. You know, I keep telling people and they're like, what do you mean? Who pays you? Who's paying? And I'm like, nobody's getting paid. Like, we do this because we want multipolarity eventually in this world, and nobody understands it. So now DDG is an international cooperative, for lack of a better descriptor. Around the world, we have Iraq, Yemen, Slovenia, Serbia, Russia, China, and a couple places in Africa. I'm the only one in the United States, so it's very international. So we talk
about the international anti-imperialist coalition. This is things that we talk, like, it's been dreamed about for me for a very long time. So that is very interesting. But go ahead, continue, Sarah.
Exactly that. And that's where we're at now. We made it through the Russia-Ukraine war, which was really rough, but the Russian pro-Russia community is really amazing, and they love Americans. So after we're not wrapping up, I mean, we're kind of in a place in the pro-Russia community, the pro-BRICS community, where we're kind of like maintaining, and that's kind of smooth sailing. So we're obviously all pro-Palestine. I mean, we were all together when we did pro-Palestine in 2022 and 2020. But when August or October 7th happened, we saw an opportunity to start educating people why multipolarity also helped Palestine. And then we show people how the interconnectedness of how these things work together. Because, you know, I immediately, I said, watch this. I said to the Slavs and the Europeans, so you're going to see Palestine flags next to Ukraine flags, and you're all going to say, what the hell is going on? And that's exactly what happened. So that's when I was like, now this is when we need to start focusing on coalition building. We're not gatekeepers. We have so many different views. There's no purity tests. But I think that what's important is that we are coalition building with like-minded people on the left, for lack of a better word. I hate calling it the left, but you know, with our political anti-imperialist movement, we'll call it that, while we see a coagulation on the right. It's very important. We don't have beef with anybody, but we are like really looking forward to really building coalitions with these platforms. So when Zoya hit me up, thanks again, Zoya. Big ups to Zoya always, guys. Give Zoya all your money, all your flowers, all your followers. Yeah, give it all to Zoya. But when Zoya approached me about this show, I was like, yes, another coalition, another person to add to the coalition, an ally. What I notice is that we go online and a lot of people on our side are very like, it's just online. Like, because our people are not very terminally online. I'm like, it's not just online. I talk to politicians through Twitter. They are on here. They see like what's going on. So it's very important to form these coalitions. Let people know you have allies, you have resources. There have been so many instances where somebody has come to me as a last resort, and I've said, why didn't you just ask me from the beginning? We could have had this done. Like, there's just so many things that are built and ready to go with DDG that we're ready to kind of share those. I mean, we have graphic designers, video editors, writers, we have a stream, we have a Substack, we have a podcast, we have everything, and it's all there for people to just come and say, hey, can I get a space? Hey, can you want to collaborate?
That's so interesting, because that's the idea we had at RBN. I had BetBeat Media. There are professors who live in China who spend a lot of time debunking anti-China propaganda, imperialist propaganda, and we have the International Leftist Coalition. I know a lot of people don't like that word, but when I explained on the channel before, I use it based on the old school French Revolution.
You're fine. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. And because I think it was done on purpose to confuse people. The establishment, the capitalist class, they very purposely try to confuse people. And the way I use the term, and the reason why I consider myself a leftist, is because people on the left in the French were for revolution. The idea, if you're on the left, you are for upending the current status quo. The people on the right in the French Revolution was poor peasants that were very religious, who wanted to uphold the monarchy and the system, so it was considered on the right. So the people who are forming this anti-imperialist coalition, I know a lot of them like to call themselves on the right because it make themselves feel get better. They're used to doing it culturally. But guys, if you're forming this coalition to destroy the empire, to upend the current status quo, you are on the left. They're like, the people don't understand this in the society, really trying to confuse. If you're defending the status quo and empire, you're on the right. And people say, oh, you form these coalitions. What if you form a coalition with a fascist? I had chat saying that a fascist is not forming coalitions with an anti-imperialist squad on the left.
They're not fascists if they're anti-imperialists.
You're not fascist if you're engaged in class struggle. People say, I say all the time, well, I support engaging in class struggle. I want to form a coalition so we can get in class struggle. And liberals, these dumb social democrats, say, well, we can't do that because what if you accidentally organize with a fascist? Fascists don't believe in class struggle inherently.
Exactly. Thank you. So when people were like, I'm not into the engagement or the flashiness of Jackson Hinkle. We're more of the low-key type like a Haas. But when I saw the anti-Semitism start to uptick, and I saw Haas in there talking about, why are you looking at the working class Jews? Like, let's talk about the class struggle. I was like, yes, this is where we're going. This is the message that needs to be kind of vanguarded out there and pushed, because, you know, we're seeing an uptick in the discourse. And while most of it's just trolling, it's a lot of you're brown, you're Jewish, you're this, you're that. It's all lib identity politics. When you come at the end of it, it's the coalition of fascists and liberals, really. Yep. So it's really important that we keep stressing that sort of class struggle, because I keep asking them. I mean, I had a huge space last night. You stopped by with the Groypers. I'm obviously not a Groyper, but obviously I want to know what the vibe is.
What does that mean? Because I heard.
I don't know. I think it's just the name of the frog. Like the frog is the Groyper.
Oh, okay. I see. That's so weird to me. Cause I know we're gonna talk about that later, because there are these ops, these people I think that definitely serve the establishment, like the Nick Fuentes types, the right wing people who are trying to make this into a religious war, try to make this about. Like, I want you to finish your thought. Go ahead. I'll pass to you.
No, you're fine. It's good. But I love the back and forth. No, you're exactly that. As soon as like I saw this weird they call it the Chrislam Alliance, the Christian Islam Alliance, I said, that's not a Christian Islam alliance. That's a Catholic. No, never mind. I know what's going on. So I was like, okay. Yeah. So then I kind of was like, all right, well, then I'll just make sure that I stress the fact that this is class struggle. Keep stressing the fact that, I mean, almost every single person at DDG has been bombed at one time by NATO. So we need to focus on the anti-NATO message. And there are, and I'm not, please don't overreact, chat, and don't take me wrong. There are parts of their ideology that do serve us. I'm not allying with the Groypers, but that's what I was trying to get to the bottom of. Like, what about their ideology lines up with us, and why? Do you know what I mean? So
I've seen people get criticized, and I'm gonna add this, because I've seen people get criticized when my friend Eddie, and obviously yourself, who reached out to the right, Jimmy Dore got in trouble for inviting a Boogaloo Boy on. But I want people to understand what I have said throughout my entire life. If I engage with the faction what I deem to be anti-black, anti-racist, you guys understand that's extra credit. That's not my job.
You should be giving us flowers, not being mad at us. That's
So the
literally
people are like, why are you guys talk? The white people are supposed to talk to the problematic white people.
Yes.
I never understood that. So when I saw that you was talking to those people, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. White people, you gotta clean your community up. And I and people get mad at me for saying that all the time. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. When Jimmy have a Boogaloo Boy on, that's exactly what you guys supposed to be doing. You guys are supposed to be talking to Nick Fuentes because I don't want to do it. I have no interest in talking to that guy.
Leave it to you, Nick. We'll be like, you're forced to talk to Nick Fuentes. None of the white people are going to take care of it.
People like, Nick, will you debate the other Nick? Like, no. I'm not going to debate whether I should be here or not. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
No, you're so right. And that's another reason why I want to know. I have a psych degree as well. And my political science focus was fascism. I find fascism fascinating because it's got a huge psychological element to it. There has to be like a dejected sort of lower middle class. And that's kind of what I was trying to figure out where the anger is, who we're placing it on. And the tweet that sort of freaked me out was the Likud and Hamas are the same. And the only difference
can get to it right now. Let's do it right now then.
Likud has nukes. And I was like, okay. Hillary, like
Hillary Clinton.
Yes, that's what she says. But yeah, so I had been having a space, and then I saw them kind of going back and forth, and I was like, well, this is what was bound to happen. You know, they've been kind of waiting for this and drum rolling up for this. But I was like, this is a very shit libby message. But this is indicative of people's political illiteracy. Because they should not be surprised at this. And that's what my space was originally about before you had gotten there. It's because people were legitimately pro-Palestinians who maybe aren't as politically savvy as we are. Were like, I thought he was pro-Palestine. I was like, no.
Yeah, so if you guys don't know, I'm gonna let you finish your thoughts, Sarah. If you guys don't know, what we're talking about is like this I think it's obviously a Fed infiltrator movement where these people on the right are pretending to support Palestinians, supporting to be anti-Israel, but I think they're 100% serving the establishment. So what Sarah's talking about, for the people who haven't seen it, is Nick Fuentes. He sent out this tweet, and he's supposed to be like the anti-Israel right, who I think is fraudulent. But he said the only difference between the Likud and Hamas is that Likud has nuclear weapons. So Sarah, I pass to you, and you can continue.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting, and it was a really good lesson for them to learn. You and I have been around the internet. We know the ins, the ropes, and everything. I mean, we can smell it from a mile away. I said in October and November, I said, watch how much eggs you put in the grifters' baskets, because once this kind of loses steam, they move on to the next topic. That's literally their job. Their job is engagement. Their job is trending topics. But I think that, they thought they had this big white movement in the United States that was going to help them. And I kept telling them, I said, don't you know the poem? First they came for the communists, then they came for the such. Yeah, like you're on there too. They're gonna come for the brownies too. So then last night after the tweet came out, I thought it was a great way to start talking about the alliance with Laura Loomer. And I wanted kind of them to explain it, and this allowed them to explain it. They don't want Bibi Netanyahu. They don't want Jews in our government. They want them all to go back to Israel. So they don't care if Israel exists or not. It's a very true to form America First movement in the sense that they just want to cut all foreign aid in that sense, in an international isolationist sense. So it was interesting for me to watch kind of the pro-Palestinian community and be like, what do you mean that America First doesn't also mean pro-Palestine? I'm like, no, this is like that's what the point of the space was. And eventually it delved into people kind of wanting to debate the ideologies, but it was real. That's kind of where I wanted the debate to go. And I thought it went really well. And we got to kind of find out. And I thought it was a really good way for people to learn because, when the protests started, I said, you guys, go to your protests, do your BDS, all of that stuff, but just make sure that you research before you get into all the feels. Like, don't give your time, energy, and money to people who are literally like funneling it back to the government. And now I'm watching them all have their hearts broken. And it's kind of like that. So I didn't like do it for like engagement, but I kind of wanted to be like, this is a really good lesson for you guys to understand about how you understand your allies and what means to an end is and kind of that sort of thing. So yeah, it was interesting. I did enjoy that space though.
Yeah, and it was very interesting seeing people who are diehard Trump supporters, like Nick Fuentes, pretend to be anti-Israel. In what universe has Trump has ever been anti-Israel? So you guys see how those two things don't add up? Nick Fuentes is here to get people who will otherwise be anti-Israel to support someone who has pro-Israel policies. You guys
Correct.
understand that Donald Trump killed General Soleimani on
Mhm.
orders of Israel?
Peace be upon him.
And now he's saying Biden hasn't done enough to crack down on anti-genocide protest.
Mhm.
So these people who promote Trump as an anti-establishment fighter while trying to position themselves as anti-Israel, they are playing the same con that AOC and Bernie Sanders is playing.
Well, you guys are lucky because you have me, and I live in the phone. I live in your phone. You can always find me online. And I love, like I said, I study fascism. So I watch the incrementalism, and you're so right. It started off as an anti-Israel thing, and then eventually it became, I kind of like Hitler. And then eventually it became like, the Nazis weren't really that bad. And then eventually it became like, actually, I just hate Jews. Like,
yeah, you know what? And I think people like Nick Fuentes exist because think what the Zionists have been trying to do. The Zionists is pushing that people who criticize Israel are just anti-Semitic, that they hate Jewish people. So guess what Nick Fuentes in the right wing does? The anti-Israel right says, "Oh no, Jews," and they make it a religious war. And Nick Fuentes in his audience, they always say the Jews. I saw something when they was talking to Jackson before. They're like, "I hate how you use Zionists. It's the Jews." Saying Jews instead of Zionists don't even make sense because the largest driver of Zionism in the United States come from evangelical Christians.
Right. And they hate them too. That's why they are a Catholic movement strictly. I guess there's no Catholic Zionists as if Joe Biden doesn't exist, but whatever. That's why they're a strict Catholic movement. They do not like evangelicals or Protestants. They see them as they're not Christians because they kind of went away from the church. That's also something that I learned last night. So yeah, let's read kind of Jackson's. See, but and forgive me, I don't
Well,
mean
you want to read the thread a little bit because I know
yeah. Let's go through the thread together because I have serious
Uh,
issues with the thread itself.
Yeah, all right. So I saw this earlier. I was like, this is. I just found the exchange interesting. You have the MAGA communists trying to go after the obviously fake anti-Israel right wing. I found this exchange to be very interesting. I saw it too. So Nick Fuentes said the only difference between Likud and Hamas is that Likud has nuclear weapons. So then Jackson said Hamas are freedom fighters, where Likud Zionists are carrying out genocide. The difference is clear as day. If Sarah, if you want to chime in,
I can't see it anyway. So go ahead. Go. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you want to interrupt and share your thoughts, just let me know. And this is what Jackson called him out, and Nick Fuentes saying, "Look at this." And I've seen this is
this was
right when we say this.
Yeah, he tried to paint the Hamas supporters as the Zionists. This is a really interesting kind of like I understand what we're trying to do, but it's a very interesting pivot. I'm not really understanding it.
He's saying by explicitly supporting Hamas, you're playing to the Zionist framing of the conflict. Terrorist tactics, and now I'm gonna get back to that. Terrorist tactics, including suicide bombing, are totally unacceptable. Or do you forget you was pretending to be a Christian today? Nobody in America support Hamas either. Now let's get into this, and this is why I was calling out the right wing on terrorists. And he also said something earlier where he said he condemns quote unquote terrorism. And you guys see my speech in KU. I said that no one is able to define what terrorism is. Because what's terrorism? Yeah, you have Israel that bomb hospitals, destroy the medical infrastructure of Gaza. If that's not terrorism, terrorism is defined by the government. Anyone who opposes the government and resists their tyranny.
He was literally at Charlottesville. Like he was at January 6th.
I see that. That's what you saying. Okay, I get it now. I get it now.
Was he a terrorist? What's the difference between him? People died at Charlottesville. People died at January 6th. They were civilians.
Yeah, and they've been labeling a lot of Trump supporters as domestic terrorists because of January 6th. Something I warned the left about because now they are doing the same thing to anti-genocide protesters on campus, and the same people who gave the establishment permission to label protesters domestic terrorists because it was Trumpers are now acting surprised. And now the right wing is now buying into it. So, and I mentioned this in the tweet earlier. If you're using this logic that we supposed to condemn Hamas and Palestinian resistance because it's terrorism, and the United States acknowledge as terrorism, what do you think will happen if you ever took up arms against our tyrannical government? They will label you a terrorist. They label the people at the trucker protest in Canada a terrorist.
Correct.
So if you believe in this, as Nick Fuentes and the entirety of the quote-unquote anti-Israel right does, then you might as well give up your guns. You might as well. Why do we even have a Second Amendment? Because if we ever form a militia taking up arms against the government will label that militia as a terrorist group, and then you will be forced to condemn it because you're against terrorism. You guys see the inconsistencies of the right and why they're here to confuse?
Exactly.
I am anti-Israel, but I'm against the people who resist them. But go ahead, Sarah. I think
exactly that. And if you know, because you're like me, a watcher, but they always do this. You get your movement, and then they take the piece of the movement, and then they turn into terrorists. You mentioned the truck drivers, January 6ers are terrorists, the BLM protesters are terrorists, and then you kind of become disenchanted, and you start to distance yourself from the movement a little bit, and you kind of like, all right, that's kind of yucky. I don't want to be a terrorist. I'd rather be an anti-Semite than a terrorist, you know? So that's exactly what they're doing. They're kind of making this. Trump isn't pro-Hamas or pro-Palestine either, so they got to make pro-Palestine at least a little bit toxic to the people that are supporting it, because there's a big overlap between Nick Fuentes and the pro-Palestine community just by default, obviously. So he's got to pull them away.
And we talking about the conservative wing of the fake resistance to Israel. We're gonna get to the liberal wing of the fake resistance to Israel here very soon. And Jackson said, drop a like if you're American who supports Hamas. Unlike you and Piers Morgan, I don't condemn Hamas. I got criticism of Jackson, but good for him for that. But anyway, Sarah, you want to chime in?
Why did you lead with the drop a like?
Yeah, that's cringe. Yeah, that is cringe.
I was like, that's exactly what they're criticizing you for. Read the room. That's where I was like, yo, dude.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna be responding, like, this is literally what we need. Like, if you've positioned yourself as the leader, right? The badassery and all of that. I expect more, or else I'm gonna take up the reins. Like, I expect more. I'll continue to call him out on my little baby account, but I expect more than a hit like so I can try to ratio you. Just give me something of substance.
And look, the guy who's gonna lead this white boy revolution. This says that we can't support ideas because they're not popular yet. This is your anti-establishment fighter. There's no revolutionary or anyone who fights the establishment that believes this, because what he's saying in this tweet right here is essentially is, oh, Jackson, your position is unpopular, so you shouldn't have it.
Exactly.
That's not how someone who's anti-establishment thinks. So I don't even have to tackle his point here, because that's what he's saying. Well, if you go against establishment, I didn't mean to close that. That's not a position that we should take.
I mean, honestly, he mentioned in one of his tweets at the very last sentence, he said, like, Americans do not support Hamas, and we were like, what? Yeah, we know. Like, what?
Yeah, Americans are brainwashed. So is there any other tweets you want to read on this? Because they have a pretty long. Anything else you want to add before we get to the liberal wing?
I'm really disappointed, and then I've been waiting for this kind of debate for a while. I think it's really important to have. I understand like how these things kind of function, and this is something that you can't ignore. I hate to give internet drama or internet beef, but remember, these people come off of the internet, debate in person, they're meeting in person, they're having rallies in person, they're going to other countries and speaking on what they believe is our behalf. These people are still accountable to us. If you're part of the left anti-imperialist movement, he's still accountable to you. And that's not the message that I want out there representing me as an anti-imperialist in America. And so he's still, I love Jackson, and we've all watched him grow up, and he still has a lot of growing up to do. But he's now accountable to us. You have 2 million followers. We've gotten you there, and you stole our posts. You know you did. I love you to death, but you know you did it. And you got to 2 million, and now you are accountable to us. If you are the one who's carrying, it's not just your message. It's not just your message. And I don't like that sort of messaging. And then I wake up today and I'm looking at the timeline because I expect like addressing this, scheduling a debate or a discussion. No, I see like 100 scheduled tweets that are like Hamas's freedom fighters with like an AI picture. I'm like, I expect more than this. This is bullshit.
This is why I don't. People who like his content, that's fine, but this is why I don't understand propping him up instead of a Palestinian journalist, instead of someone from Gaza. But that's just me. That's just me. I mean, he does a good job messaging, I guess.
The people that love him are the people we need. The Chinese people, the Russians. We need those people for the multipolarity movement, and he has that foot in the door. So it's on us to. He's young enough to where we can obviously work with him, influence him, and it's on us to fix that. I think that we could coalesce behind him and keep him as an international thing or whatever he's doing, and then build up these movements. DDG doesn't want to be, we always say we do the news. We are not the news. We don't want to be on our faces or have 2 million followers or go through all of the stuff Jackson goes through. I don't want that. So for me, it's important to me to keep him accountable if he's going to be a representation of me. And I'm going to keep feeding into his kind of popularity.
Yeah, I'm all for that, absolutely. Because that if you're going to be supportive of someone, you definitely need to be holding them accountable. Had you guys seen that? Like I had Jackson on. We had a lot of things we disagree with. If he calling out Israel, and I said this on the show before, I have a lot of disagreements. Jackson annoys me, especially with pushing the culture war. I think that's designed to distract the workers. And he's doing the bidding of the establishment by dividing the potential anti-capitalist movement by talking about irrelevant bullshit. But if you're going to use your platform to talk about Israel Palestine, that's fine by me. I'm gonna just move on and do my thing. I think there's way too much Jackson Hinkle derangement syndrome.
I really think that he's very harmless in the sense that people are like freaking out over him. I'm like, then mute him. Like I literally muted him.
You guys see, I had to unmute him to show the tweets because I have him muted. And that's not a diss on Jackson. Me muting Jackson is not a diss. But if you don't, his tweet's gonna be all over your timeline. Whatever God's blessed this man, he better thank his God and pray, because this man is the most blessed person in the algorithm I've ever seen. The reason why I have Jackson muted is just because if you don't, every 1 out of 3 tweets you're gonna see will be Jackson. But anyway, let's get to the liberal Zionist thing, because we were talking about this, and I was having one hell of a exchange with Michael Tracey, who I always like generally avoid, because he always gave me bad vibes, especially when he attacked Fiorella Isabel from the Combo Code.
Really? I love Fiorella.
Attacking her legitimacy as a journalist on some fuckboy shit. Like, it wasn't even a good arguments. You know what I mean? He just always gave me bad vibes. You know what I mean? He
goes down to the protest and starts harassing the protesters. I'm like, could you not, or not harassing the protesters, harassing the people who are harassing the protesters. And I was like, you are like the creepiest guy. Could you send somebody else down there to harass the harassers and not you? You just look like a stalker.
And he also viciously smeared Tara Reid. Like, if you guys want to look into it, look at what he said about Tara Reid. It's literally insane. Like, these are two things I've seen. I'm like, all right, I'm not there to take this guy seriously. But he got a pretty big platform. I seen he actually followed me after I went on System Update. So I was on System Update and he came on right afterwards. I'm like, oh damn, can't believe Glenn thinks this guy legit. But hey man, that's fine. Now Michael Tracey gets upset because Jackson comes out in support of Hamas. So it's probably the worst thing to criticize Jackson for. For his support of Palestinian resistance. Out of everything you can criticize Jackson for, that's what makes it him actually having a base position. Go ahead, Sarah.
Can you read it? The Michael Tracey part.
I'll read it. He says, I'm gonna show you guys my exchange and why these people kind of annoy me. If the CIA wanted to plant a social media influencer who was such a shameless charlatan that he discredited every opposition cause he came in contact with, they could hardly do better than this guy, because there's no evidence he's CIA, just an immoral engagement gamified freak. And this is what made me chime in, because that wasn't the part. I saw this tweet and I'm like, what? What? He said, if you actually support Hamas, you're a giant idiot. I'm like, okay, let me test that theory, because I bet you won't handle a debate well with me on this. He said, if you actually support Hamas, you're a giant idiot. As best can be ascertained, their leadership are a bunch of gibbering doofuses. You guys know who Hamas is? This is the Palestinians who was victim of Israeli colonialism and violence. That's who he's calling idiots. People who had parents died, their family was wiped out. That's how Hamas originated. It was a bunch of people who was victim of Israeli violence. But anyway, let me continue. every sane Palestinian figure, going back to Edward Said, used to dismiss Hamas as a freakish sideshow. So it was this anti-Hamas talking point, and I had the Palestinian Community Network on, had a lot of radical revolutionary Palestinians, and a lot of these people he's quoting are the Palestinians who are more on the center, on the right, who condemn Palestinian resistance as well. Well, so why are we propping up? And I had the Palestinian Community Network, all these Palestinians on. They are frustrated by those same people who condemn people who stand up against Israel. There's factions there. But why will you immediately take the side that has been selling their people out, making these false security deals with Israel and the United States? I'll pass to you, Sarah, but I'm gonna just read my response. I'll pass to you for
do you want to do like a little bit of tinfoil hat? So
go ahead.
Okay. So this is why it's important, kids, to know you're in international geopolitics. I was being attacked online over the Serbia-Bosnia war, which I'm like, why are y'all bringing up a 30-year-old war? I guess because I'm in the side of Serbia and the other side was majority Muslim. So they were trying to utilize that as a way to discredit me and say, you can't be pro-Palestine because you are pro-Serbia. And I was like, that's 30 years ago. Can we talk about this later? I always encourage my subscribers and myself to always ask the why and the why now. Why are you bringing up Serbia right now? Then I noticed that the UN is bringing up Serbia, and they're putting resolutions through in order to label Serbia as genocidal. Now, for people that don't know, when you hurt Serbia, you hurt Russia. You hurt BRICS, because Serbia is Russia Junior inside of the EU. And we love Serbia, and Kosovo is Serbia. I see Serbian Stalin in the chat. That's my boy. But so they want to demonize Serbia and kind of push them into the EU and get them to kind of do what they want them to do. So that's why I said, well, why? And I hit up the Slavs. I said, what is going on? What's this uptick in all of this crap? And they said, the Saudis are dumping in money into the UK. And I said, what? And they're like, yeah, they have propaganda programs. Oh, shut up, because the Slavs are always like tinfoil hat crazy. They're like the COVID freaks and all of that. Yeah. So I waited a little while, and then all of these Saudi accounts come out of the woodwork, come into spaces. They start carrying this very strange, like Gulf adjacent view, which is condemn Hamas, but we're cool with the two-state. We want to normalize. Let's get this calmed down. Let's get rid of Bibi. It's the Saudis that I'm pretty sure are dumping money into this. The people that kicked Jackson and Haas out of that protest were actually CAIR, C-A-I-R, which I don't know if your listeners know, but they're affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood and align themselves with the terrorists in the northern parts of Syria. So we're dealing with things that people aren't really like akin to. And that's why I hate that people are getting caught up in debates and engagements and drop a likes and protests. And I'm like, guys, there's really some shit going on in the UN. You have to look. The UN doesn't do anything. We know that. But the UN is a propaganda tool. So if you see something happening in the UN, you need to examine that, why it's happening now. So when I see a genocide resolution for an event that happened 30 years ago, and I see who's promoting it, it's the UK, Israel, and the United States. That should be all the red flags that you need. And you should start digging into that and find out why. And so that's what we're seeing. We have Saudi dragging their feet to get into BRICS. We have very Saudi positive messaging. We have CAIR infiltrating our protests, all of that stuff. And we know that the Saudis own a lot of shares in Twitter. And we know that they have actually a larger and more wealthy lobby than the Israelis. So take that as you will.
Yeah, we had a Palestinian roundtable I did a few weeks ago. You guys know my friend Ashley from Madison from Palestine. I had my friends from the Palestinian Community Network on, and they would tell you like these Arab groups, these Palestinian groups who are super strict regarding who you support and whether you can support resistance or not, because a lot of these groups require condemning Hamas and resistance of any kind. And they said on this show that they view those people as enemies. Like they view them as a very big obstacle. And this did not me. You guys remember the panel. This coming from the Palestinian guests. They're like, bro, one of the most frustrating things we had to deal with are these fence sitters. You know what I mean? And that's why I take up the cause, because my position always been, because this is why I ask people to do for the Black community, right? Like when I see people condemn Palestinian resistance, I want to get your thoughts on that. When I see people condemn Palestinian resistance, they hurt the Palestinian movement a lot because they cut off the Overton window for what is acceptable to be asked by the Palestinian community. Now, A lot of Palestinians, they can't go as far as they want to do when it comes to the liberation because they'll be financially retaliated against. A lot of them may be attacked and killed. If you're Palestinians that said we should support a one state where everyone has equal rights under the law, where there's no occupation, a lot of them can't take that position because they're threatened and they're intimidated. So the last thing that we should do is to cut the Overton window off for them and saying that we condemn Palestinian resistance. Because what that do is that make the Palestinians who fight for the freedom, that make them like the fringe. We need to open the Overton window up. But as someone who's allied with the Palestinian people, I 100% support their right to resistance. It's the same thing I ask my white allies are doing. Like, if you guys undercutting our ass, it make us look crazy and radical. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on this? And I'm gonna move on to de-dollarization and another topic.
And just to add, I mean, they're using this discourse in order to promote their let's re-liberalize Israel and get it to calm down. Yeah. We need to utilize this discourse to say armed resistance is acceptable.
Yes.
That is an acceptable means of protest when you are oppressed. I mean, I don't even want to imagine that degree. You got to do it before that degree of oppression. But we need to use this to say we accept this as a legitimate form of protest against a government that left them no other option. We have to stress the fact that they exercise their other options: diplomatic, peaceful protests, documentaries. They've done it all. We have to stress that, and that we justify and accept that armed resistance is a valid form of protest for the people that are being oppressed. And that's the message that needs to come out of this. Honestly, that's what we as the anti-imperialist movement need to continue to message, not this bullshit. Drop a like for this. Do you love Hamas? Check out this hype video. Such and such is a tomboy. I don't give a fuck. Like, we need to be latching on to this pro-Palestine movement because it is rich with messaging, and we need to free Palestine in the meantime. So it's like a win-win-win-win. It's such a teachable moment in history. And I'm deathly afraid that we are going to miss it. And we missed 2020, but I really don't think 2020 had the depth that this one does. I think that this is much more international. There's much more resources to pull from. And I think more people are involved this time. Forgive me if I offend anybody, but I just feel like this time, I think that people are more fed up domestically, and that's helping to bring them out into the streets. So I think that we need to take control of this narrative before it kind of gets out of hand and it becomes the left or the anti-imperialists are really just worried about Jackson Hinkle and Miami Beach, but the right is actually worried about doing political shit. We need to make sure that we get away from that sort of perspective or optics.
Yeah, I agree 100%. DDGeopolitics. Do you want to do a quick plug? Because that's all I like.
Just go, if you want to share the screen, you can, but just go to DDGeopolitics.com. It's really, everything is there. The homepage is a landing page for everything that's new. We just did a stream with, who was that? Scott Ritter? And, that's there's a find us at www.tdg. Yeah. And then everything is on the Find Us page. There's also a merchandise shop, but the merchandise, if you look at it, it's designed by independent artists from Morocco and Egypt. And we are always open to more artists displaying their artwork. We give 70% of the proceeds to the artist, and then we usually charity or kind of operational costs. But yeah, we're just trying to build something that's unique. Something that's different, and something that people can come to and feel included and celebrated and supported. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and this is so based. I'm so glad that Zoya brought this. Cause I seen the tweets from from your organization. I've seen some clips. I'm glad that Zoya put me on because I had so many streams where we talk about forming an international anti-imperialist coalition, and that's apparently what this is. Like this is base as hell. I can't emphasize that enough.
I always say to the international community, and I said to my people the other day, I said, I want you guys to look at the actual election itself and tell me, like, why aren't Americans pausing and saying the election in and of itself is problematic? Like, if that's what we're working with, we got to pump the brakes. So what are you thinking? Like, I'm not voting. I'll probably be gone before election is even a thing. But what are you kind of telling your subscribers to look for? Like, what's the messaging here? Because we're not doing the election at all.
Yeah. At RBN, my main goal is to form a movement that we can use to get demands from the working class and to build an overall revolutionary movement. And there's a lot of debate on how that will look in the United States, because there's a lot of theory. There have been a lot of successful revolutions before, but the reality is, guys, there's been no colonized people. There's been no worker movement that ever went up against what we're going up against. The United States and NATO alliance, team with Japan, Australia, the UK. There's never been a revolutionary movement that had to deal with what we're doing with right now. So RBN is all about brainstorming about what's possible. So what and I explained on this on George Galloway. I think our main focus should be building a separate government with mutual aid societies. And I think we can do this with third parties.
There have been movements like that have really worked, where you kind of just form the third column and you're just like, whatever you guys got going on, we're just working up our thing over here. And I think that might be because America's so large. You know, we see these color revolutions and I'm like, you guys, like, you know, when Ibrahim Traore and people are like, a 35-year-old took over his country. I'm like, yo, it's literally like he took over Long Island. Like, you guys have to understand, like, it's not like we're so big that things are so spread out. We have to think about our movement in that context, that it's so big and so spread out. So something like that kind of sustains and creates longevity. Because I find that's the issue with America. There's no longevity. There's nothing to keep the people really engaged to keep going. We have short attention spans anyway. God knows I do. So yeah, something like that. And I think that's why DDG is kind of like always, because it's not a chore, it's not work, it's a hobby, it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, people coming and going. It's really, really interesting. And something like that in America would probably be an incredible counterpart, I would think.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Marxist and communist friends, they scream revolution, but people understand one of the first duties that we have as Marxists is to secure the betterment of the working class, to provide for people material needs. A revolution is not going to happen overnight. So what do we do in the meantime? We build our own government so we can provide for the material conditions of the people we need for the revolution later. Why do you guys think RBN puts mutual aid so hard? Why you guys think that's
there
the main
thing? See, I remember when RBN was born, and before that they were talking about general strikes. We were all going, how are we going to have a general strike, but we don't have no money? Like, where's the mutual aid? How are we going to support
and when we did the General Strike Summit, that was a big part of what we talked about, because there was a lot of people who were sniping us because people just like to snipe. But they said, well, how are you going to have a general strike without mutual aid? Yeah, the point of the General Strike Summit was we had mutual aid panels. So we talking about how to build a general strike. That was the idea. But go ahead if you had anything else.
Exactly right. So that's why it's so important. People say grifting. I'm like, mutual aid is like the cornerstone of it. We need to pay for ourselves. We're not going to have somebody. We have one socialist billionaire, whatever that is, who's willing to give people money for these causes, and he's strictly socialist. So I don't think he's going to come to us, the off left or the revolutionary left. So we have one of those. The right is working with a litany of billionaires. We need to pull our resources. Mutual aid is absolutely necessary. It's imperative to this. It's the only way the USA movement is going to survive.
Now, I'm gonna relate this all back to your original question regarding how we move in this election, because this ties into how I think we should invest into electoral politics. Because I said many times before, and everyone got their own number, the amount we invest in electoral politics should be no more than like 5%. like 5% is like the best. I'm talking about that for ballot initiatives, and it's a good way to get new people engaged into your movement. So we never rely on electoral politics to create a revolution. But if you have someone on the ballot, if you're building your own socialist third party, but you're pushing activism and giving people an option on the ballot, that is only a positive thing. That's why I also support third parties, because we need to build a third party that is based on revolutionary struggle, that is based on having this outside government that you take care of people's material needs. But once again, it should never be a giant part of the pie. It should never be your end game. The only thing you're doing is you want to get people trained to not vote for the establishment. Any revolutionary act should be encouraged. So even if it means someone going to a booth and voting for someone who's not Joe Biden, Donald Trump, it's training people to resist the empire, which is the revolutionary culture that we need to cultivate in this country, which is why I do advocate for third parties. And that's why, because we need to get people trained to no Democrat, no Republican, just those small revolutionary actions add up. Now, this is just to be very quick, very basic, like theory of change and how we move. And I think debating this, and you guys see, I had so many activists on the General Strike Summit, the Third Party Summit. I'm constantly involved in it because, as I mentioned in the very beginning, this long ass spill, we are dealing with an empire that no revolutionary movement ever had to deal with. There have been very successful revolutions, but name a more threatening, more gigantic, more gangster empire than the new NATO West alliance that we're dealing with now. The United States, NATO, and their proxies. The UK, Israel, Japan, they will all unite to destroy international left coalition. So we need to think about not only the theories and the revolutions that we learned before that came before us, but how we take those strategies and implement that, considering what we are up against. So hopefully that answers your question.
No,
Anything else you want to add before we get to
I think that's great that you brought up the fact that this is something that's never occurred in history. I don't think that people understand how deep the rot really goes, and when you start, it's insane. Just go through a website like the APAC website, who they give money to, and how deep it goes. Read a book like even the Israel Lobby by John Mearsheimer. It's dated, 2014, but you'll even be still in disbelief. It's so entrenched, and we owe it to ourselves, our country, and each other to whoever's the vanguard. They need to be respected and honored as the vanguard, i.e. you, Haas, whomever, and whatnot. And I find a lot of tearing down and all of that stuff. So I'm hoping that we can get past that kind of thing.
Yeah, we are in a new era of RBN. These are the kind of conversations you guys are going to get now, man. I told you, we are.
But we all grew up together. Literally, you, Zoya, Haas, Jackson. We were all the 2020 this kind of learning left, and people come and go, and we're all still here, and everybody's grown. And I hope that listeners and subscribers give us the grace, because we were all together sort of back then, and kids and whatever, and messing with each other. But we've all grown up, and now we're all we all did our own thing. And it's kind of a really beautiful and organic sort of thing. You have RBN, you have DDG, you have RTSG, you have Infrared, you have Jackson, whatever he's doing. And all of these things grew up together.
Yeah, I said it. Yeah, sorry, I said in my speech at KU, and I said it many times at RBN, I truly believe we're in the golden age of journalism. And in the independent media phase we are in right now is the post-Bernie boom of independent media. So I think a lot of us was actually tricked, because we thought that there was a real independent media movement that didn't really happen until a few years ago. But what happened was there were a lot of liberals who rode the Bernie Sanders wave, and then they blew up because of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And we thought that these people was actually for it, but actually what they wanted was an MSNBC contract. They wasn't actually for building a movement. So post-Bernie, now people, I remember, we wasn't one of those channels that developed because of the Bernie Sanders grift. RBN, and I'm sure DDGeopolitics and the people you mentioned before, we all post-Bernie. Like the left independent media was just independent media who propped up Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Now, post-Bernie Sanders was independent media like, all right, fuck, what do we do now? Like, what's the options for us? And then we continue to learn and grow and shift further to the left, learning from the mistakes of the previous independent media culture. Anything else you want to add before we get to our final topic of the day, Sarah?
No, let's go.